Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Savvy. Welcome to the WIRSPA channel. Today, we're actually starting a new chapter. Basically, this is called WIRSPA Rum Makers series, and we're launching this new edition with Carol Homer Caesar, Angostura's master blender, and of course, you have your host Matt Patrick here, WIRSPA community envoy, and of course, an amazing author and speaker. All right, I let you guys here to continue. Carol, I leave you in good hands. I leave you with Matt.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Fred.
Uh, yeah. Thank you, Fetty. It's great to be back. As Fetty alluded to, this is a brand new series we are doing here called the Rum Maker series. Some of you may have seen our previous series that we did, starting with the WIRSPA, or first, actually, when COVID started, we did the Rum Talk series, where we took viewers inside of the distilleries in the Caribbean, about the WIRSPA member distilleries in the Caribbean, where we got to sort of have virtual tours of them with master distillers and master blenders. And then we followed that up with the WIRSPA Icon series, where we talked to people who've spent their life in the Caribbean rum industry, iconic people who have shaped Caribbean rum as it exists today. And so after a little gap, we now are starting the new series, Rum Maker series, which is people who are still actively working in rum and sort of bringing them to you to sort of get to know them better beyond just what's on the company's website. So I'm honored that our first guest here is Carol Homer Caesar, who we know as the we're told master blender of Angostura, but she's much more. Carol, welcome to our first show.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for hosting me today. And before we go on, I really want to congratulate you, Matt, on that phenomenal book, Modern Caribbean Rum, and for also winning the Tales 2023 title, Best New Book on Drinks, Culture, History, Spirits. I actually started the book and could not put it down, even though it weighs a few pounds.
Oh, 8 pounds it weighs.
But listen, folks, Matt did not pay me to advertise, but it is really rich in history, our history on rum, Caribbean rum, and all the details on each country. Matt, exceptionally phenomenal. I can't find all the words to describe that book. Thank you again. We really appreciate it for you documenting everything we do over all these years. Thanks again and congratulations, Matt.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I would just want to add to that I myself have huge congratulations or huge thank yous to the WIRSPA, the people, the Carol Ann and Vaughn at WIRSPA, who were instrumental in getting me access to so many member distilleries that ordinarily might not have thought to talk with me, but it was the WIRSPA played a significant role in me being able to tell much more of the story of Caribbean rum. So I'm glad that I get to work with WIRSPA and share its story and share the stories of people like you. So with all that said, let's jump in. Before we sort of get into your story through Angostura, let's sort of start at the end. Tell us about what your current role is at Angostura.
Yes, Matt. As you know, I officially retired at the end of November 2021. And presently, I am the senior technical consultant with Angostura. And I am still carrying the master blender role, but part of my role now in Angostura is training the upcoming master blenders in what I do now. So the training involves sensory evaluation, it involves blending, it involves research on trending of spirits, international regulations, aging. So it's very wide in terms of the training because I am handing over the baton. And I am also involved in technical projects which were initiated under my portfolio when I acted as Chief Operating Officer. So I am working on 2 of those major capital expenditure projects. And these mainly involve plant improvements or expansions. And I'm also technical advisor to the quality control, quality assurance team, and marketing, depending on the new product that we are launching. So I'm also actively involved in the new product development team.
Wow.
So that basically sums it up for now.
Is that all? Yeah, no, but I think what you state is an important thing we need to understand is so many of the people who work in the Caribbean rum, they're put out into the public as the master distiller, the master blender, but their role is actually much larger than just that. I remember talking with Sean Caleb at Demer Distillers, and he's the master distiller, but he's doing everything. So yeah, I think it's important to sort of highlight that. So with that said, let's jump back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Trinidad and if rum was part of your family life growing up.
Yes, Matt. I'm actually from the southern part of the island. This is in San Fernando. I grew up there. And actually in Trinidad, the people in Trinidad will call it the countryside of the island. And this, at the time, we had a lot of lush cane fields all over the southern part of the island. And I distinctly remember as a child seeing the cane farmers cutting cane and burning the cane and cutting it, passing also in front of Usine St. Madeleine, where the sugarcane factory was situated there. And this would be from the cane fields to the plant to be converted to sugar. And my memories of that at the time, I did not associate it with rum. I was a child. So my only association with rum would be my parents having friends over and bringing out the rum. I cannot tell you whether it was Caroni or Angostura or Fernandez rum at the time, because it was just dark rum and Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
And the rums will also come out at Christmas time when, we have visitors, mainly the persons who will come and sing parang. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but
I'm not.
that is a traditional Christmas setting that we have, and some of the other islands have it as well. So my real intimate relationship with rum started when I joined Angostura. So, and of course, carnival time, when I go to the shows with my parents and go on the streets with the celebrations, I would see people having rum and beer and wines and so.
Right. And you mentioned Usine St. Madeleine. I was very lucky I didn't get to go in, but I at least saw it from the outside. John Georges and me were driving around the west coast of Trinidad, and then we had to make a stop there just so I could see it. So.
Yes, it's all in ruins, unfortunately.
Yeah, sadly, so much of the Caribbean's history is now in ruins, and sort of like trying to sort of keep things going as best we can. So. Before you joined Angostura, you actually had a long career prior to joining Angostura. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, that's true. I worked at Caribbean Research Industrial Institute, and this is well known as Cariri, located on the campus, UWI campus in St. Augustine. And there I actually learned all the techniques in chemical testing, and this would be testing of water, alcohol, food, pharmaceuticals, as well as during that period, I actually pursued and completed my BSc in chemistry and my master's in chemistry while working at Kariri. And part of my portfolio was also training personnel in the use of the analytical equipment. So this would be your gas chromatographs or your UV vis spectrophotometers, your HPLC. I would train personnel there. I was also involved in setting up the lab accreditation program at Kariri at that time. So I was actively involved in definitely the training and the proficiency testing for the laboratory at Kariri.
Right. And you bring up an important point there, is I've noticed in talking with so many people in roles like yours, so many people who are leading Caribbean rum today got their start in the laboratory. That fundamental understanding of science and chemistry is vital to their vital undercurrents to the actual perceptions of flavor and things like that.
Yes. Starts with quality and ends with quality.
Correct. Yeah, and like so many, they're starting in laboratory and a QA. Like almost everybody
Yes.
I speak to is like had spent at least several years in the quality assurance role. So when you joined Angostura, what was your first role?
Well, when I joined Angostura in November 1995, they were actually moving from Fernandez Compound. So they were relocating to this present location. So I was involved in assisting the chemists at the time in setting back up the laboratory. So I was involved in setting up all the analytical equipment. And part of it also involved training. At the time, we had very little lab personnel. So training the personnel in the use of some of the equipment. So I was actively involved in that, as well as assisting in setting up a computerized system, because when I joined in 1995, laptops weren't a thing then, and computers weren't fully in use. But where I worked at Kariri, we were very familiar with Excel, and we use computers. So there was trying to train the staff to be able to move from Cardex system to setting up Excel spreadsheets and computerizing all the records instead of going through these hundreds of Cardex. So that was part of my role at the time.
Okay. So, and then my understanding from our talking previous to this was that your role grew rapidly in the first 2 or 3 years there. How did this come to be? What happened?
Yes. So what basically happened, the chief chemist at the time, and some of the viewers would know Vidya Dudnat, she was starting a new department, quality systems, because in 1995 we attained our quality management system. This is our ISO 9001 certification. So Vidya had the responsibility of setting up the quality systems, and the next certification we were going to was the environmental management system, and also auditing. So, and the other chemist at the time was Robert Wong, and he moved into production to take over the running of bottling and blending. So I was left in the lab to set up and continue with the quality control and quality assurance of the testing of our raw materials, our in-process samples, as well as the finished product, which also involved the quality control at the bottling line. And I was also given the portfolio to supervise the bitters blending at that time.
Right. So, at some point, my understanding is you got thrust into a blender role, not just testing and a blending role. How did that happen?
Right. So, with the movements of the two main lab personnel, the chief chemist and the chemist, and I came in as a chemist, I really took to learning a lot about the age rums. And I found it very, very interesting doing the gas chromatography, doing congeners, seeing all these components, and then making that association with the sensory evaluation when you smell and taste and making the connection. I became very curious as to how we can bring particular age rums together and have something phenomenal. And what also fascinated me at that time was the colorless liquid going into these casks in these old warehouses and coming out golden brown or dark, very dark brown, and the transformation. So I was always curious about that because at the time we would analyze all the age rums. So I was very, very familiar with the age rums as well as the starting when as the current distillate. So I started experimenting at the lab level with different rums and so. And I would ask the more experienced personnel to do the sensory evaluation to give me feedback. So it really meant basically, teaching yourself as you go along and just getting the feedback.
Yeah. So my understanding is that while you certainly had the experience in chemistry and lab analysis, things like that, that you weren't you were not in any way formally trained as a master blender. Like, how did you teach? How did you teach yourself?
Right. So at the end of almost in late 1999, 2000, I got the opportunity to attend the All Tech training school. This was the alcohol school out of Kentucky. And there was the first time I was exposed to different spirits and the in terms of how they were manufactured and the sensory evaluation of all these spirits. So this would have been Scotch whiskey, rum, vodka, gin, beer, a range of it. And it was a 1 week program. So there I was able to connect the dots. So when I returned, it gave me more fuel basically then to go and start looking at creating blends, rum blends. And that's how I started. Later on, which would have been in the 2000, maybe 2012 or so, I visited the Scotch Whisky Research Institute, and there I did a program on sensory evaluation. And we were able to create our Angostura rum flavor wheel based on the training coming out of the SWRI. So it was a yearning to create rums, the knowledge from testing and sensory evaluation, and bringing it all together with the right attitude, I guess. I started doing the blending of the rums.
Okay. So let's go back in time to 1995, 1996, 7. Yeah, it's hard to imagine a world where Angostura sort of premium rums weren't around. So you blended the first sort of Angostura, rum for the world stage. Tell us what that rum was and how did that come to be?
Yes, Matt. Actually, the first premium rum. Now, prior, Angostura would have done a limited edition to mark the opening of the factory. And this was not, at the time, termed a super premium rum. But in late 1999, I was asked to create a rum to mark the 175th anniversary of Angostura. And this is when 1824 was born, I should say. And what the the product brief they stated was a rum that was medium to heavy, a 12-year-old rum, one that had smoky notes, and I got a very detailed brief on it. And it was supposed to be in a very expensive package. I don't know if some of you remember the original package of 1824, where it was a highly decorated decanter with a medallion, and the bottle top was waxed, and there was a seal with a ribbon going through it. And this rum had to be phenomenal because this was the first super premium rum coming out of Angostura. And this, of course, was our Angostura 1824, which we still have today. But as we all know, the blends would have evolved over the years.
Right, right. And if I remember correctly, in my many conversations with John Georges, that is, I believe, his favorite Angostura rum. I mean, they're all your children, but I think he has particular
Yes.
affinity for 1824. So 1824 comes out, and that would have been almost 24 years ago. So it's been a while. So what were the remainder of the line? What came next, and like what was the order, and what came after that?
Right. So after 1824 was created in 1999, in 2001, I was asked to do a rum which would compete with the cheap Scotch whiskey on the market at the time. So in the early 2000s, there was an influx of cheap Scotch whiskey on the market. And Angostura's marketing team at the time felt that we needed to have a premium rum which can basically outcompete then the Scotch whiskey. So 1919 was born out of that era, in that the notes had to be light to medium bodied, and there was supposed to be the pure wooden of the bark, the oak. So we had to then create something that was almost similar to blended Scotch whiskey then at the time. So that would have been 1919. And the youngest rum in 1919 was the 8-year-old rum, but there were older rums in it. So it was more light to medium bodied rum. And then we moved to the other rums in the international rum range.
And what were those? As for me, I'm fascinated in history. I sort of like to know when everything appeared.
Right. So then we moved to the 7-year-old, which is more of a medium to heavy dark rum. And then we moved to the 5-year-old, which was a lighter rum. And of course, the 3-year-old, a white rum, because we felt in the range we should have a white rum, where the youngest rum in that 3-year-old, the reservoir, is 3 years old. So that would have been the range. And so this would have been like all the way to 2006. And then in 2015, we were asked to do a 15-year-old rum. And this was 1787. the marketing team asked for it to be launched in 2015. So this was then the last of the international rum range. So this came on in 2015, the
Okay.
1787.
Right. So a personal question, because I get to ask these sorts of questions on here, is the 1787 is actually one of my favorite rums. It's has a particularly heavy profile to it that it makes me wonder if there's another Trinidad distillery in there. But tell us more about this blend.
Right. So that's interesting you asked this, Matt, because the brief was the target 18 to 45-year-old, male, both male and female, and also to have more silky textured, well-rounded, a medium to full body, and a long finish. So we needed to use aged rums, which were heavy, and some of these rums are actually 18-year-old rums in the blend. And we had to craft it in such a manner that you did not get all the tannin notes, but at the same time, it's a well-aged rum with a mix of both heavy and light rums.
Excellent. Yeah, like I said, I particularly love it. There's some like oiliness to it that's just very enjoyable. So let's sort of shift away from rum for a moment, because I saw this myself when I visited Trinidad Distillers back in 2019. And one of the things I noticed was a sign that says caramel plant. And Angostura makes more than one type of caramel. Tell us about the two types of caramel that Angostura uses, it makes and uses.
Yes, Matt, the caramel plant actually has been around a very long time. This is even, it could be in the 80s. And we actually do two types of caramel. And one, we use the wash gray sugar, and this we basically just heat it up with water, and then it's continuously stirred, and this is heated up to over 100 degrees and stirred for about 5 to 6 hours. And this this caramel we actually use for our bitters, and this is called bitters caramel. We will prepare it up to a specific gravity to about 1.3, and this we use in our bitters as our caramel for bitters. Then for the rum now, we go through the same process, but instead we add a catalyst to the mix. And this is heavier, it's darker, and the specific gravity is about 1.4. And this is what we use for our rum, and we call it rum caramel.
Okay.
So
And
these are the two types of caramel we make.
right. And so, and I think that's an important point is these days when people think about like caramel and the spirit, they think, oh, it must be E150. But sounds like, you and others, a few other distillers are still making traditional caramel the way it's been made for hundreds of years.
Yes, that's correct. And when we did the testing, it's E150 for the use in our rums.
Okay. So let's still keep going back to the late 1990s. Was a fascinating period of time. When you joined Angostura, Bacardi was actually a partial owner of this, had invested in the story and made some of its rum for some of its markets there. Was that a particular challenge? Were there any special procedures or things that needed to be done?
Yes. When I joined in 95, Bacardi would have already set up a lab in the late 70s, early 80s. And this lab, the chief chemist at the time was Mr. Badawi. He was responsible for the laboratory. He was responsible also for the raw materials used in the Bacardi rum, as well as the processes involved in the blending of the Bacardi rum. And he would approve all the in-process samples as well as the final product. And we did bulk rum to be shipped out to England. And we, as Angostura Lab, we had to verify all the results by testing those rums, which his lab would have already tested. But based on our results, he would then compare and decide to approve or not approve. And a lot of the bulk spirits went to England. We did heavy rum as well as light rum. And we also did the Bacardi Gold and the Bacardi White. And that was bottled on our plant up to about the late, I would say, late 90s. We had that lab there. The staffing was also managed by Bacardi. So Bacardi had their own lab personnel and their own process personnel, their own blending. And even their vats had the bat symbol on it to separate it from our vats. So everything was separated and everything was controlled and managed by Bacardi.
Interesting. So the sort of the end of the Bacardi era at Trinidad Distillers Limited sort of was the start of the CL Financial. CL Financial purchased Angostura, and then later went on to buy several other Caribbean distilleries like Appleton and St. Lucia Distillers. What was it like when CL Financial, a Trinidad company, comes in and buys Angostura? Was there significant changes in operational procedures or freedom to do new things? Tell us about that.
Well, Matt, in all fairness to me, I can only speak from where I sat at the time as senior manager responsible for laboratory quality assurance, blending, new product development. So when this took place, I had to visit some of those plants, like I visited the Lawrenceburg Distillery, Florida Distillers, St. Lucia Distillers, Appleton. And it was really from a point of view of understanding their process and doing some sort of auditing to see how they did their manufacturing, how they ran their bottling lines, how they did their staffing. And Burn Stewart as well. I visited Burn Stewart in Scotland. And what, from NPD point of view, some of their products, for example, Florida Distillers did breezers at the time. And that influenced our NPD at the time in Angostura. So we created a line called Rush, which was a carbonated beverage with different flavors, very low alcohol. And also the flavored rums, which we did, which would have been really more different, like watermelon, sorrel, and so we did. That was influence from Florida Distillers, who did a lot of flavored alcoholic beverages. The other influence would have been where they were doing a lot of cream drinks, alcoholic. We could not do it at our plant because we did not have the facility to do it. So it was done in the US. We did Angostura chocolate cream and a vanilla cream and so. So that was how some of those products would have influenced then our product development at the time.
Right.
A lot of the alcoholic beverages were actually sold at our Angostura shop. At the time, we called it the wine shop, Angostura wine shop. So like the Belvedere vodka and some of the Scotch whiskey, spirits and so were sold at the shops at the time. And we also did some of our bottling of the international rum range at Burn Stewart.
Oh, interesting.
So they were partially our co-packer and distributor for Europe. And so as I said, I could only speak from where I sat, and those were some of the influence then of the CL World brands.
Right.
And what also happened for us at the distillery, we actually had the carbon recovery plant built. And this was where the carbon dioxide from the fermentation was cleaned and scrubbed and liquefied and sold to, well, one local beer company as, CO2, liquefied carbon dioxide.
Right.
And so that plant started up. Also, the fuel ethanol plant was built in Point Fortin. This was the southern part of the island. And this was really to have like fuel additives, which was sold to the US. So
Oh,
these
interesting.
two plants were built during that period.
Right. And we touched on it earlier. You mentioned 1999 was the first international range rum, and that would have been
Yes.
shortly after the CL Financials had purchased
Correct.
Angostura. So back to rum. As a blender, you must constantly keep track of your aging stock, what you have now to blend with, and what is being put down into cask for future products, including new expressions that don't exist yet. How do you approach this task, and what are your bigger challenges of managing what's in a cask, and what are you going to put in a cask, and what will you have in a cask in 15 years? What are the challenges of that?
Yes, and that's a very good question. For us as blenders and as rum producers, you always want to ensure you have rums all the way into 20, 25 years, meaning age rums. So originally, we had a manual system set up, Excel spreadsheets, and it was very tedious to go through each rum, each cask, to keep track of it, both physically and even though it was computerized, but it was on an Excel spreadsheet. So what would drive the entire rum strategy would be, of course, our sales and bulk demand plans. And based on that, annually, we would then input the information and make sure we have our age rums all the way out to 15 to 20 years. But it meant the blending and aging personnel keeping track of this on a spreadsheet. Fortunately for us, in 2021, we got the DRAM system, and this is the Distillery Records and Management System. And with that system now, the blender can input their recipe. And from it, then they would see if they have enough stock to make the, say, the 15-year-old or the 1919 or whichever rum.
Mm-hmm.
And coming out of that, then we would trigger, have the triggers for the agent to say, hey, we have a surplus here or we have a deficit here. And we also would project, the blending team would do their projection, because obviously you can't just do an annual based on the sales plan. You also have to make assumptions, looking at the sales demand and also looking at your reserves, putting in your reserves, as well as catering for the angel share. So fortunately for us, we have DRAM now, which we are setting up and using, and of course, which is a lot faster than going through this manually.
Right. Sort of an off-topic question, but you bring it up. Ballpark, what is your typical angel share you get in Trinidad?
Well, roughly for us, it's 6% annually.
Okay.
For us,
Yeah.
yes,
Good.
based
Okay.
on our warehouses, the humidity and the temperature and so.
Right. Right. Okay. So circa 2013 or 20, actually, we back up a little bit. You mentioned, having rums 20, 25 years out into the future. If you think about it, that means the rums that you're putting, some of the rums that Angostura is putting down now may not see a bottle until 2050. Just kind of crazy to think about it.
No.
You know? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So, circa 2013, you were given the official title, finally given the official title of Master Blender of Angostura. But your responsibilities are far, far more than that. What else have you been responsible for at Angostura over the last 10 or 15 years?
Right. So I actually, yes, Master Blender, doing training, doing sensory evaluation. So this was done before and during the Master Distiller role. So sometimes the Master Distiller and Master Blender will do training sessions together, or sometimes we do them individually. So if John is traveling somewhere in Europe and we have visitors, diplomats, I will do it in Trinidad.
I think John is always traveling somewhere in
And
Europe.
yes, I know. So apart from that, I was also involved in doing the quality management system audits with the co-packers, which I mentioned earlier. I would have to go at least once a year and visit all these co-packers for our low sodium sources. I don't know if in the early 90s or so, we actually bottled bitters in the US. So I had to do audits on that as well as the mixers. We did a line of mixers. Also, packaging material suppliers. I would do those visits and do those audits, and visit also the any sort of product development going on out in the US particularly. And of course, Burn Stewart, I had to do audits every year because they bottled our international rum range up until 2010, I believe. Up to 2010, they bottled the international rum range. So also the quality systems portfolio I had to carry, and this would be maintaining our quality management system, the environmental management system, as well as the health and safety and NPD blending. So all of this would have been under my portfolio. Now, as early as 2019, at the end of 2019 into 2020, I was given the role to act as executive for operations. So all of operations, all the capital expenditure projects, and of course, all those areas I called under operations. The wastewater treatment plant was a big one, in terms of capital expenditure project, the re-engineering. So those would have been some of the responsibilities I had apart from the master blender role at the time.
Yeah, it sounds like much more work than standing in a warehouse with John George's and looking at a glass of rum. Yeah, it's true. Like I keep showing up at distilleries where they're taking those photographs, and I go like, I know what you do, actual work you do. It's just harder to capture in a great photo. So, you mentioned blenders. Angostura has become known for their team of blenders rather than just you as a single master blender. Tell us about the team you've assembled.
Yes. So, yes, we are a bit different in that when I joined in 95, I actually met a team of blenders, and there was no master blender, as you rightly said. Um, and as the team evolved, we um, ended up with a team of female blenders. So although in 2013 I was made master blender, I worked with a team of blenders. So these ladies all started in the lab, as you rightly said at the beginning of our interview, and they all have a strong quality control and quality assurance background. And together, all four of us, we have 100 years
Oh,
of
wow.
technical expertise in rum manufacturing. And I am happy to say that quality is in our DNA. It started with all women in the quality control department, and the blending team is a team of women, all bringing their strengths. So we have Anne-Marie O'Brien, who has been here for over 32 years. Ariana Mirage, who started in quality and she's now our NPD manager. We have Narissa, who started in quality and she's now our blending manager. Myself, and we have two ladies who are in new product development, Crystal Pereira and Fiola. So it is a team of women. You know, Matt, we tend to be very meticulous. We are passionate. We work until we get it almost perfect. And we really put a lot behind it. And I must say, it's really a pleasure doing this work. The ladies know me. I can speak about rum for the entire day, you know, especially when we are doing the new blends. Because there is just so much excitement when you're doing a new product and how many different ways you can go while still considering the end consumer and, of course, the marketing requirements and the market regulations, the international market regulations. So it's quite exciting. And it's not just rums. We do the flavored beverages, the ready to drink, the Angostura chill. We do bitters, product expansion. So it's a lot of excitement.
Yes, I for one would love to be there like a fly on the wall when you and the whole team are discussing rum all day. That would, you know, but I'm a geek, so. Um, you touched on this earlier, but I want to come back to it quickly. It says Angostura is obviously a very large distillery, and while it's not the most glamorous part of making rum, waste treatment is a critical function of it. You mentioned an effort to rebuild and expand the waste treatment capabilities, and you oversaw. You were basically in charge of it, from what I understand. Tell us more about this project.
Yes, while I acted as the chief operating officer, we were in the middle of doing the re-engineering of the wastewater treatment plant. And this work actually started around late 2018, 2019. And what had happened was that we felt we needed to do the re-engineering because the treatment plant was not as efficient in treating the 350 meter cube of waste per day. And we had to bring it up to speed. So in 2019, we started the work. We engaged MSA and CUS as the international consultants, the subject matter experts, and we started the work. Now, firstly, I mentioned we wanted to come up to speed to be able to treat 350 meter cube of waste of the spent wash, as well as we wanted to be able to increase our overall plant efficiency. So we felt that we needed to change the technology for the anaerobic digester. At the time, we were using the upflow anaerobic sludge system, and we wanted to move to the continuous stirred tank reactor. So that was the second thing. I mentioned already, improve our efficiency to 65% and even exceed that. And we also wanted to reduce the discharge of the harmful gases, mainly the hydrogen sulfides. So we saw the opportunity to upgrade. We got the approval to do the re-engineering. And our goal is also to see how best we could increase the ratio to go more towards the alcohol production side versus the wastewater output. So those were the objectives we wanted to meet, and this is what we embarked upon during that period, 2019 into 2020. And through a lot of challenges, trials, but thankfully a hardworking team in the distillery, and this would be the team of engineers, maintenance engineers, as well as the plant manager, headed by Mark Paul, Wendell Kipps, Wendell Collymore, Ayana, and Calvin John, who is now retired. We were successful in accomplishing this. It was not easy.
Right. Oh, I can't imagine how much work went into that over the years. You mentioned starting this in 2019, and it obviously took a little longer than that, which leads us to the topic of the pandemic. And it was challenging for everyone, and rum makers amongst them. What were some of the particular challenges unique to Angostura, and how did Angostura respond and create success in the face of this adversity?
Well, Matt, it's interesting you asked that question because based on all those objectives which we wanted to meet with the wastewater treatment plant, as you rightly said, it happened during the pandemic in terms of that re-engineering work. And one of the challenges, not the main challenge, was having these engineers, foreigners, in our country, at our plant, at the time we closed our borders. This would have been in March 2020. And obviously, they wanted to get back to their homes. A lot of different countries were closing their borders. And we had to do whatever it took in terms of get all the approvals from the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Security, to get these engineers back to their homes. Some of them out of Russia, out of Serbia. We had to get them back. So when we were just about to embark on the re-engineering, the pandemic struck. So what we had to do now was to think quickly. And this is why I mentioned earlier that kudos out to that team that I call those engineers and chemists and so who worked 24/7 to make it happen with that wastewater treatment plant. So later on, we had to then do this entire re-engineering remotely. So MSA and CUS, we were using MS Teams, WhatsApp, emails, whatever it form of communication with a team of local contractors. and they were being supervised remotely by the MSA and the CUS team. And at the end of this period, we had to bring in the MSA engineers and CUS to actually commission and train our people after this entire re-engineering was completed. And that took a lot of effort because we are talking about other international borders closed and bringing them in, but we were determined to have this plant up and running. So we actually had to charter a private plane to bring them through one of the Caribbean islands where the borders were open. And fortunately for us, that things worked out and we were able to open our water resource recovery anaerobic digester plant in August 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. So kudos out to that team. One of the other challenges we had was really trying to keep a safe and healthy work environment for our staff, contractors, our visitors. And this was a massive project which was taken on by HSSC. And they started implementing safe working zones throughout the company. So we basically had teams of persons who worked different shifts. And as far as possible, we tried to physically segregate these teams. So even on the bottling line, we had temporary barriers to keep people in different zones while at work. We also had, even where they had lunch, even where they congregate, we tried to keep teams within that space so that we would not have teams mixing with other teams. It was quite an interesting time for me as acting CEO, I must say. And we were fortunate that we had all the support from the board to the executives to the trade union to the staff. Everybody came together and it really showed our resilience during this period. Apart from the border being closed, we had a state of emergency, which started in May and went all the way to November in 2021. We had curfew from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., but we worked with the Ministry of Health as well as with the Ministry of Security, and we were able to overcome that. And those were some of the main challenges we faced. And of course, always giving support to those workers who contracted the COVID-19 and their families, and having a full-time doctor on the plant with the nurses and so to always be there. And it was quite a challenging period, I'm sure, for everyone in the world at that time.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it sounds like an immense amount of work to make all this happen. And if I remember correctly, Angostura could not actually sell alcohol within Trinidad at that time. But you were still, I guess, still working on products. Tell us about that.
Yes. So fortunately for us, we had export orders, and at times we had 30% of the staff being able to work healthy and not having COVID and being able to work. And we rallied around them. We had our business continuity plans kicked in. So it meant other persons who were not line workers, the supervisors, were chipping in to get the products out. And it took quite a big team effort during this period. We also had a sanitization team on full-time, sanitizing before shifts, after shifts, all throughout the offices. So we were able to get our orders out in spite of all those challenges during the pandemic.
And there was a new product, at least one new product that was developed during that time, wasn't there?
Right. So even though we had the pandemic with challenges, we also had some successes coming out of it. And one of that was manufacturing the hand sanitizers, which we were able to donate to our frontline workers, to our communities, to the schools, to the ministries. At the time, you could not even get a bottle of hand sanitizer to buy because it was just not available. So we were able to give it to the workers, give them masks as well. And the new product development team, we continued working throughout the pandemic. And coming out of that, we were able to launch our cocoa bitters in June of 2020. The first after orange bitters, the first of that product line. And we were also able to do the flavored white oak. We were able to do the sorrel and bitters. So in spite of everything, we were able to do some launches. And the following year, which would have been in 2021, we were able to launch our first spice rum tambu, as well as the other flavored white oak beverages and the Angostura chill. And again, the hardworking NPD team, kudos out to them. They were able to work on that fantastic rum Zenith, which is 195 bottles currently meeting TDL in that bottle. And we were able to launch that in June of 2022.
Yeah, no, I was fortunate to be at that launch in New York, and
Okay,
it's
lucky you.
it's a beautiful rum, and I got to watch John George's talk about it, and I'm
Yes.
always happy to listen to him talk. So, one of your projects outside of Angostura has been working to help raise quality standards across WIRSPA member producers. You know, I think there's like over 30 producers now within WIRSPA, including organizing trainings and workshops and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Matt, that was a very exciting time for us, WIRSPA members, in that I approached Vaughan and asked if we can have these technical workshops so that we can have a space to exchange knowledge, as well as Angostura at the time having all this experience in quality management system and environmental management system, lab accreditation, and having the full distillery up and running. I felt it was an opportunity for the small distilleries or even the medium or large to come and meet in one place to share the knowledge. So what I did was have these workshops actually on from propagation, yeast propagation, fermentation, distillation, aging, bottling, and not just do the tours, but also have lectures. And the supervisors, as well as the lab analysts, they were involved, the managers, they were involved in actually doing the tours and the lectures, and also testing these raw materials, the rums, the treated water, and actually seeing the tests done. And part of the program, I ask members who had any area of interest to let us know. So if there was an interest in testing molasses, we dealt with them separately and did more detail with them. So it was roughly 2 days, 2.5 days. And we had members from Grenada, St. Lucia, Suriname, Barbados, Dumrep, Antigua, Guyana. And I ran this 2011, 2012. Vaughan asked for it in 2013, but we just had so much going on in Angostura at the time. It was difficult because in organizing these workshops was just myself and Gillian Andrews, who helped in Angostura because, you know, you have work going on and you are organizing these workshops.
Right.
But I felt it necessary to share the knowledge. We even did laboratory information management system, lab accreditation. And coming out of that, we started a proficiency testing program with the laboratories, which Vaughan coordinated with me. And I believe we did this for maybe 2 years, and some labs continue doing the proficiency testing. So it was a lot of work. And we invited personnel to come at there when it's convenient to come over and spend a little longer time, you know, at the labs or the distillery to learn more about the test methods. Because what I was trying to drive home was the fact that you don't have to be ISO certified, but at least if you have a quality management system in place where all your processes are documented via process mapping, your test methods are documented, it's a lot easier for you as a distillery, as whether it's you don't have a distillery and you just have an area where you just probably blend or so, as opposed to not having anything documented. So if you want to maintain that high quality rum and you want to repeat that product, you know, you needed to have some system in place. So, you know, we shared all the test methods and the way we do our process mapping. So all of this was shared with the members.
Right. And I think, and that's a very important point, as I feel like sometimes people don't quite understand what WIRSPA is. And one of the biggest things it is sort of collaborating across producers, doing things that help all of its WIRSPA member producers sort of elevate their game. So it's amazing that you did that. Just a couple questions left, unless anybody on the chat watching has questions. But you officially retired at the end of 2021, but you're still involved with Angostura. You touched on it briefly at the beginning, but tell us a bit more about what you've been doing since retiring.
Yes, actually, outside of Angostura, I have been helping some of the industrial laboratories on the island in terms of auditing and trying to bring them up to speed with lab accreditation. So I am a technical auditor as well as a lead assessor. And I'm also assisting with the Quality Council on the island, where we are trying to bring that awareness of quality throughout the island. So I have been doing some of that. I have been also assisting a small distillery in getting their lab up to speed. It isn't there physically, but it has started. And also, you know, sharing testing protocols and creating a structure then to do testing at every stage of your distillation, or whether it's fermentation or propagation. And you can start with buying even small apparatus, small testing apparatus, robust enough to be on the plant and start your testing and your documenting. So apart from Angostura, I have been assisting there at Angostura. Well, also a technical advisor to some of the team members, which would be like marketing at times on the new product development. And I'm still involved in the rum aging projects. And I've been working on 2 capital expenditure projects, one being a plant expansion, which I mentioned earlier, and a new plant.
Yeah, I don't know how you do all, like, you only have 24 hours a day. I don't know how you do all of this. So
it's exciting, Matt, and now I can be more focused. I no longer wearing the hat of COO or senior manager or so. So I'm more focused, and it's really very productive and more efficient,
Right.
you know.
you get to do the fun work. You get to do the things you enjoy doing. So, final question, unless anybody else has any, type now or forever hold your peace. Final question. I understand you're a fan of Joy Spence, as are many of us. Tell us why, and tell us your experiences, your personal experiences with Joy.
Yes, Joy Spence is my hero. Joy became Appleton's master blender in 1997, and I actually joined Angostura in 1995. And the work Joy did in terms of the Appleton range, you know, is just so outstanding. And just remember, she was the first female master blender in spirits internationally. So she literally broke that glass ceiling on all the male master blenders up to that point. So Joy, paved the way for us women, not just as master blenders, but as women in the rum industry. And her work, speaks for itself. Those Appleton range, which she is still out there championing as the ambassador. And I visited Appleton, the labs there, well equipped. Even at that time, they already had a mass spec, and they were already doing all their research. I visited the plants as well. And over the years, you know, if I call Joy, regardless of wherever she is, she would respond, communicate, or give me a contact. And I must say it's not a continuous reach out or call out, but she's always open to assist in any way she can, whenever. And I must say that she really, really opened the doors for us women in this industry. And I was happy to see she received the honorary doctorate out of UWI in 2014. UWI honored her, and Appleton Estates, that visitor center and the whole tour is in honor of Joy. You know, I was really happy to see that. And she really is an outstanding person, and definitely someone to continue to look up to.
Right. And agreed. And just a small plug, on our WIRSPA YouTube channel, we have our Icon series, Interview with Joy, if anybody would like to watch that. We have one question that came in just very, very recently. I think you kind of addressed this already, but it says, when was the original white oak launched, and what ages of rums are used in the blend? I think you touched on it, but if you want to answer very quickly.
This is just white oak. When white oak was launched would have been, as you're talking about, white oak in terms of the flavor drinks or white
I
oak?
think I was talking about like the original white oak Angostura rum, just the rum
Well,
unflavored.
when I joined in 95, white oak was already, it would have maybe in 2000, in the early 2000, because it was rebranded. It was Old Oak White,
Hmm.
and then it was rebranded to White Oak.
Okay.
So Old Oak White was there even before I joined, but it
Okay.
was rebranded to White Oak.
Okay.
And what was the other part of that question?
So what ages?
Oh,
What ages? And I'll add, like, if you can share it all about, like, sort of what the constituent distillates are, like light or heavy or whatever. Anything you can
right.
share. I'd love to hear these things.
Right. So it's a mix of the 3-year-old rums with 4-year-old rums. And it is mainly light rums we use for the white oak. And well, of course, it's decolorized. The rums are decolorized to have
Mm.
the white, well, colorless rum
Right.
then.
Right. Right.
So it's a mix of age rums, but it is a blend of age rums in white oak.
Okay. And
Youngest being 3 years.
right. And is there? I know Angostura does several different. Like, I think it's light, medium, heavy rums. Is it mostly light rums, or some like a blend of the different?
So it's mainly light rums we use in that blend. And what you'll find, like the top note would be more citrus, a citrus note. But I know there's this misconception because it is white rum. For those persons who are not in our industry, they think it's unaged.
Right.
And we do have an unaged rum, which is our Forest Park Puncheon.
All right. Right.
So that question comes up a lot,
Right.
whether we have aged rums in white oak or
Right.
whether
And I think
it's straight off the still, just diluted.
right. And it's something I talk to people all the time about. And I think it's fairly safe to say that within the rum world, the vast majority of white rums you can buy are actually aged. Most people don't know that. So we have no more questions there, but I'll just add one last little thing. Vaughn commented in the chat over here. He says, "I'm looking forward to Carol doing less at Angostura so that she can lend more support to our smaller producers."
Yes, Vaughn.
All right.
I
Well,
hear you.
yeah, she heard it. Excellent. Well, this has been fantastic. You've conveyed your story exceptionally well. We know a whole lot more about the inner workings of Angostura. So, thank you again for being our first Rum Maker series guest. And with that, if any last words before Federico takes us out?
Well, I am looking forward to this series to listen to the other rum makers. I find it's a fantastic avenue for us to share our stories and to share, especially the technology or the those of us who have been around a long time, that expertise in different areas in rum manufacturing, and I really look forward to it. I appreciate the fact that you all have me here today. I really enjoyed sharing, and hopefully we could do some more collaboration, maybe in another rum distillery where we can have the WIRSPA members attend.
Yeah,
And thank you very much, Matt, for
you're very
having me.
welcome. And when you have that meeting, I want to be there as well. So, thank you again, Federico. You can take us out now.